Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to do a review of the latest episode of Star Wars Andor. It was called Narkina 5. And as it starts, we see that Cassini is put on a transport to the aforementioned Narkina 5, which is where he's going to be serving his sentence. Meanwhile, Mr. B in his bonnet, who I guess has a name and it's Karn, is approached by some Imperials and then questioned by the Imperial officer lady person, who again also has a name, which is Miro, about his digging for information on Cassian, who in the next scene, speaking of which, arrives at his destination, whereupon the shuttle he's in heads for a prison in the middle of an ocean next to what would appear to be other prisons of the same type. Back to Miro, we see that she's briefing the rest of her white-suited cohorts on what she's been discovering, and as a result, they decide to crack down on Ferrix to try to find Cassian so that he can lead them to Luthen, whom they call Axis, because he's got his hands on or fingerprints on various different things that have been happening throughout the Empire or parts of the Empire that are anti-Empire in nature. He's the connection point for all of those things they've discovered. Cassian is dropped off at his prison barefoot, where he learns that he'll be working in an Imperial factory and that punishment for any non-compliance comes in the form of some type of electrical pain inducement through the floor, which is the same throughout the facility. Back to Karn, we see that he tries to parlay his way into a better position by trying to leverage his success at recognizing the situation on Ferrix when no one else did, and figuring out who killed the two guards that were killed at the beginning of the first episode. But Miro isn't having it. She kind of tells him to pipe the hell down. Back at the prison, we see Cassian meet with a character called Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis, who is, I guess, in charge of the floor and the room that Cassian's going to be working on. And it would seem that he's a bit of a taskmaster. He's very focused on his team's succeeding, his room succeeding, because it affects his fate in the prison. Speaking of that room, when the room that Cassian's working in has a productivity level that's deemed unacceptable, Cassian watches as all the work groups in the room race to produce as much of whatever they're producing in 39 minutes as possible so that they aren't the group that gets punished for the room's poor scores. And he stands there watching because he hasn't been told how to do his job yet. He's just got there. Then we see Mon Mothma, and we see that she's meeting her friend again at yet another gala type event to talk about the money moving shenanigans that they're engaged in, which they keep having to do like in hushed tones and by pretending they're talking about other things as they're walking around this room full of people. It's pretty weird. At the prison, when all the prisoners are lined up in various hallways, Cassian watches as one of the inmates seems to be communicating with another in another hallway across the way through a window by some kind of sign language. Cassian's introduced to his cellmate and his cell, and he's shown how they receive food, which is through a tube, and the flavor of which can change based on how a particular table performs at work. He also learns that his fellow inmates are pretty upset about the giant crackdown that the Empire did in the wake of the heist, which very much lengthened a bit, if not all, of their sentences, and which, of course, he is responsible for. He also learns that the floor outside the cells is electrocuted and that it doesn't have to be activated by a guard in order to send out the pain signal. It's just that way all the time, and if you step on it, you get zapped, which I didn't understand. Like, do they not have force fields? Just keep them in the cell with a force field. Anyway, we soon find that a month has gone by, and as a new shift day begins at the prison, we see the guys shower all at once. We see that the guys shower all at once by standing in a room and getting doused with whatever cleans them, some kind of mist. On Ferrix, Cassian's mother isn't doing well, as Bix and Cassian's friends see to her. And it turns out that she's recovering from a fall after engaging in some rebel-based activity. And they talk about how they don't know how they're going to care for her, as well as the fact that they don't know where Cassian is. And it turns out that the two ladies from the heist group, Vel and her lover, are watching them because they apparently think he's going to be showing up sometime soon and Vel is supposed to kill him. Bix once again climbs the pipe to make a call, which Clea receives before urging Luthen to shut down the channel because it puts them at risk, which Luthen agrees to do even though he is also looking for Cassian and feels that Bix knows more than he does about where he is, even though she doesn't. An inmate in a cell near Cassian's steps onto the electrified floor committing suicide. Bix winds up being chased by stormtroopers when they see her in a crowd, call her by name, and she runs. Luthen visits the Forrest Whitaker character from Old Republic and pretends not to know who did the heist. Luthen wants him to provide air support to a mission that another individual is planning, which the Forrest Whitaker character is quite opposed to because he doesn't think the risk is worth it and because he has differences with the person that Luthen wants him to work with. We then see that Bix is brought to Miro, whom it would seem has a few questions for her. The episode closes on a final moment of watching Cassian's team do their work. So once again, I thought this was a fantastic episode. The tension, as it has always been, is unbelievable as the screw keeps turning and turning and turning, and the Empire keeps doing harsh thing after harsh thing to the people, which is exactly what Luthen wants them to do, and which is exactly why he does the things he does, because in his words, oppression breeds rebellion. And so it's a story about, as it has been from the beginning, a rising rebellion that's being led by a guy who is intentionally ratcheting up the pressure on the Empire so that the Empire will ratchet up the pressure on the people so that the people will rise up more strongly and more strongly as the noose tightens. And I think it's a perfect sort of symphony. And at the same time, you now have Cassian in a fight for his life in a different way than he's had up to this point. He's always been on the run, on the run, on the run, fighting for his life that way. But now he's in one place, just fighting for his life day to day, minute to minute. And his fate depends on the people around him, which again, it kind of has since the beginning. But in this case, it's much more of a microcosm of that situation. And it's just intense as hell. And, you know, you feel the desperation of the other prisoners as they keep worrying about, you know, we're going to get shocked. We're going to get shocked. We have to perform. We have to, you know, be in line. We have to, you know, host that barge and tote that bale, as it were, in such a way that we don't get friggin' zapped or killed, you know. So I just think it's excellent. And I think it's portrayed not only in the dialogue and the writing, but also in the visuals. He's in this prison where everything is stark white. Like there's some color, like there's some orange and gray. Well, you can't say gray. Gray's a color, but it's so everything's white and gray, and then there's like a little bit of orange. And so it's just this, and everything's crisp and clean. And you would think that that would give you pleasant sensation, but it doesn't in this case because it's evocative of, you know, like intense oversight and an absence of variety and a presence of monotony and blandness. And you just feel from it, you know? And I think they did an excellent job of bouncing back and forth between what Miro is up to and, you know, what Cassian is up to. I mean, there's other stuff mixed in there. There's what Luthen's doing and there's what Bix is doing, but it bounced a lot back and forth between Cassian being in a tense situation and Miro creating a tense situation, and just bounce back and forth. And I just thought it was amazing. And I'm more convinced than I was last week that Miro is going to turn out to be his sister. So, you know, I just think it's excellent. And I hate when the episode ends, and I can't wait for next week. I will be back next week with a review of the next episode. So I'm going to get out of here. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.